There was this one time.
You're like the opposite of Don Johnson's character in Tin Cup. Do you remember? Like he yells, like he's yelling to her. He's like, he hates kids, old people, and dogs.
Yeah.
Those are the
My
only
third
three
one
groups
isn't
that Molly
dogs.
loves. Molly loves kids,
Yeah.
old people, and dogs.
I do.
Everyone
Probably in
else
that
can
order.
get bent.
Yeah.
Like you're the opposite of Don Johnson. Welcome to this week's episode of Teaching Keating. Molly, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, happy February.
Happy February.
Yeah, we're
It's
in
good.
it. We're in it. Thanks for showing up today, being nice, being friendly.
That's not even that's not even like a veiled
No,
like kind of joke.
No.
Like you can't even like say that with a straight face.
No.
Here's my friend Nikki's version of this. I'm a kind person. I'm not a nice person. And there's a really clear distinction between those things. So I know that's a little bit, you're kind of alluding to like what we're going to talk about today, but I know that that was like a low key. It wasn't a slam, but it was not a compliment. Just
here's the thing.
Good thing we've been married for a while and I know all your
Yes.
nuances.
So like you saying I'm a
Mhm.
kind person,
Yeah.
but I'm not a nice person.
Yes.
So first of all, agree 100%.
Thanks, because you're married to me, you know.
Secondly,
okay.
I think so many people who listen to our podcast would be super shocked by that.
What?
I've told you this. This happens when I'm on the road
Okay.
all the time. Number one, people will come up to me and
They
say
always
like,
ask where I am.
they
and you're
always
like, we're
ask,
not like a package
where's
deal.
Molly? As though we travel together
I know.
all the time.
We are married, but
Yes.
one of us actually has to be at home with our children. They're not at a point where they can raise themselves. Not yet.
Yes.
Although I think they probably think
But
they
also
can to
the
some
other
extent.
thing people say all
Sure.
the time is like, I feel like Molly, especially women, they tell me
Oh, really?
like, I feel like Molly and I would be besties.
Oh, that's really funny.
And
I mean, I'm a very likable person. I'm just not a nice person.
these are
I can barely get that out to be
These are-
straight face. It's okay. It's okay. I think you and I both, and we've talked about this in the past, are both the kind of people, and this is just my perception from others, but also being relatively interpersonal, are the people that like, you either like us or you don't like us.
yeah.
I very rarely are people like apathetic or like lukewarm.
And
Like, those Keishnicks, they're fine.
to be fair,
Sure.
I could not care less which
No,
one it is.
neither one of us. I actually,
Yes.
I actually prefer one or the other. I've never met anyone who's like super lukewarm, like, meh.
Oh, you prefer
I
thought you
prefer
meant,
that they
like-
love or hate.
I thought you meant like I prefer one or the other as like I prefer love to hate. I was
No,
like, well,
no.
yeah, of course.
I'm just saying,
everyone
if you're going to
feels
have
that
an
way.
opinion, have an opinion. It doesn't offend me. There
Agreed.
are people in the world I don't necessarily jive with either. It's fine. It's not personal.
Agreed.
Something rubs me the wrong way about them. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with being
That's
like,
fair.
they're not for me. And that's 100% true.
That's fair.
I would rather have you an opinion. Stick to your convictions, whatever it is. I prefer that.
There's people in life you're just not going to click with.
Sure.
Right? Which is
For
and this is-
whatever reason.
This is a decent segue
Okay.
to our topic.
Okay, good.
Okay. The one I
Yeah.
started with was garbage, but
Okay.
this is a decent segue to our topic.
Because it was a low key, like
It wasn't
slamming.
even low key. It was so overt and so not hidden. Well, here's what's terrible. I sat here for a second and thought, like, how am I going to get into this? And that's what I came up
That's okay.
with. So I want
Hey,
to.
you gotta turn. I don't know. Sure.
I got a what?
At the coffee, I don't know if we're allowed to have it.
Oh, I'm with the branding is fine.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
I'm curious.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious if you think there are times when it is okay to be mean or rude to people. So hold on.
Sure.
Like think about what we teach little kids.
Okay.
Like, we tell little kids all the time, like, hey, be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Yeah.
But that's not real.
I don't think I've ever said the words. I'm just thinking through it, like in my classroom. Like, what did I actually say?
Be nice or be kind.
I think I was like kind words only, right?
That's
or
bullshit.
Sure, I get it, but
Adults
like when
don't use kind words
sure,
only.
but I'm just saying when you are in okay, yes and no, in a work setting, right? Like when you're set with someone all the time. So like in adulthood, when you have coworkers or whatever, you have to be able to get along with people to a certain extent.
Yeah.
That is kindness.
I'm not necessarily
Albeit
talking
of
about
my
work.
other feelings.
I'm not
I
talking
know
about
you're
work.
not, but you gave the point of like it's BS to teach kids that in the classroom. Well, not entirely, because when you're with a group of people for 8 hours a day for 9 months of the year, you're going to have to figure out some of those systems where you don't get on each other's nerves all the time. So that
100% agree.
kindness piece actually does matter.
I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
and
was my only point.
when you walk through life,
Sure.
more often than not,
Yes.
you want to err towards or just be like aligned with kindness.
We say it to our... Go
I
ahead.
agree with that.
Okay.
I agree with that. I do think there are times in life when it is okay to be mean
Oh.
and okay to be rude.
I don't think it's ever okay to be mean or cruel, ever.
Let's get into it.
I do, however, think it's okay to be curt and let people know their business when they are being inappropriate.
I think we're talking semantics here.
We're
now.
not, because I've
Like-
seen you in public and had some experiences, and so I'll just throw it out that they're embarrassing.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I don't think you're surprised that I probably would say that. Like, as your wife, I'm like, oh gosh, that is... Can he just like, ooh, dial it
I
back?
know.
Yeah.
I know.
So I do get embarrassed.
I know that in those
Sure.
moments,
Yes.
I'm probably being embarrassing.
You're being way extra. However, go ahead.
But what goes on in my head,
Sure.
and we'll talk about this because I'm
Yeah.
curious, like before the podcast, I had you
Mhm.
jot down like, hey, what are 3 instances where you think it's okay to be mean or rude? I have 3 instances
Okay.
where it's okay to be mean or rude.
Okay.
And I'll tell you this, like every single one that I wrote down, in my mind, I'm being some sort of like social justice warrior.
Right.
Like this is for the common good. And so because this is for the common good,
Yeah.
like, you know what?
Yeah.
The world needs a hero right now.
I know.
And
And
I'll-
it's got to be you.
and I'll be that hero.
Mhm. I know that's what you say to yourself in your head to sort of justify your behavior, which
Totally.
that
That's
is a thing. Sure.
and it's a justification.
It is justification.
Yes.
However, I would argue there are some moments where I probably agree with you, where people like we're in an airport or we're doing something and you've had enough or someone is being inappropriate and you step in and sort of right the situation. I have seen you do that a fair amount of times
Well-
because you're in airports weekly.
Well, let's jump into it,
Sure.
right? Because
Okay.
this is my first one.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
Let's
Go ahead.
ping pong back and forth.
All
I'll
right.
give you one. You give me one.
'Kay.
When is it
Great.
okay to be rude? And I alluded to this.
'Kay.
So like disruption of the common good,
Okay.
right? Lines, like. If people,
This is your own beef right here. Go ahead.
But here's the thing, like we're living in a society,
Yes.
right? There are agreed upon social norms.
You would think.
One would think
Yes.
that we've all agreed to,
Sure.
which is like, hey, if there's a line,
Right.
you take your spot in the line and you wait your turn.
Sure.
For example, if a plane is deboarding, guys, like
Yeah.
what's the methodology for a plane deboarding?
Yeah.
We can all agree on this, right?
You get
Like,
out of the way for the people coming off the plane.
yeah. Kaylee, I'm going to ask you, right? Like what, because we've never talked about this. What's the methodology for a plane deboarding? How is it supposed to work?
When people get off the plane?
Yes, when people get off the plane.
You wait your turn.
Yes.
Don't try your best not to stand up. I know people have back issues, but don't try to like block the,
Oh,
the,
yes.
the road.
Oh, okay, we disagree on this. She said don't stand up right away. We'll disagree
You
on that one.
always
But
stand
I said
up.
unless you have, like,
But I do have a back issue, like so I stand
understand when people have back issues.
I stand up immediately. But it's like this row goes, then this row goes, then this, and everyone zippers in. You know why? Because we're not animals, right? If you are 3 or 4 rows back and you grab your bag and you start to leapfrog, I'll put my hand on your chest.
I've never seen that happen, but the fact that you
It
have
happens
sure.
all the time.
Oh, really?
I will put
This is you
I-
being a large man in the world.
and I will
I do
step my
think
large
that.
ass out
Sure.
into the aisle
Okay.
with my leg out and my
Sure.
shoulder, and I will block the aisle.
Will you tell them, will you say anything to them, or will you just be a
Nope.
non-verbal
Nope.
jerk? Okay.
Nope.
I think in
And
that,
I will stand
Oh,
there
I'm so glad I have
knowing
been with
that,
you. when you've
knowing
done
that they're
this.
behind me,
Oh my
fuming
gosh.
that I'm saying no, because that's not how this works.
Right.
Because you know what? You're not the only person on this flight with
Yes.
somewhere to be. You know who
Yes.
has somewhere to be?
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yes. Yes.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
that's my first.
Okay.
Oh, I'm getting
first
heated
one.
already.
I know. Maybe you shouldn't have started with that one. So my first one is all larger group settings, similar to societal behaviors and
Okay.
norms. Because we live not just in a democracy, folks. We live in a society, a civilized
There
society,
you
and
go.
there are norms of behavior that, like, I don't care if you prescribe to them or not. When you are in a larger group setting, you fall in line because you are part of
Give
something
me an
much
example.
larger than you. If you are ever rude to a child in front of me, mine or other people's, I will let you know. I will immediately let you know.
You are a mama bear like that.
It will send me into a weird, visceral place of rage and anger that
It's
I don't
primal.
know that I can necessarily explain to people. Because to my previous point, like, I'm a really kind person, but I'm not a nice person. But if you ever mess with a child in any way, like, if any sort of injustice, you're rude to them, especially if they're not yours, you're a stranger, you just, like, any sort of injustice when it comes to children, I will be the first person to be like, hey, no. It's
Yeah.
not appropriate. Don't do it again. I don't want to see that again. I get whatever is happening with you over here. I don't care. You're the adult. They're the child. That's it. Done. I just have zero tolerance for that. Like, zero.
And that's
Yeah.
yeah. I've seen that before.
Yeah. You saw it last night
Okay.
at the dinner table,
Yes.
talking about somebody else.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was too much.
And
Yeah.
you do apply it universally
Yes.
to children.
Yes.
It is the volume on it is turned up when it's applied to our children.
I know.
Which of course it is.
It's hard to
Of
not
course
be.
it is.
I mean, you're emotionally connected. They're your own children. So I get it. The volume does ramp up immediately. It is something that, like, I feel like I'm pretty even for the most part. There are a handful of things that, like, will boot me up on the emotional radar here and there. That one, straight to a 10. Immediately. In any scenario, in any part of the world, in any situation.
Okay.
You know, I'm probably more emotional when it comes to my own children. However, I would say, like, I give them probably a harder time. But if I see, like, somebody else, you know, which I think is sort of a familial thing. I remember when the kids were little and I was telling my sister about a play date that our son had. And there was just some shenanigans on the play date. And I was telling her about him. And I won't repeat what she said. But it was really angry.
Yeah.
And she was just like, I'll mess up a 5-year-old. Like, seriously, like,
Yeah.
don't mess with my nephew. And that is just a very, I don't know if it's familial, some extent. But I cannot tolerate injustice with children ever. It's just a non-negotiable. Okay. So that's my first one.
In fairness,
I think I'm always pretty consistent with it.
In fairness, you do apply this to our children as well when it
Okay.
comes to, like, the potential for them, like, being cruel or saying cruel things to other people.
Oh yeah, it ramps me up.
Here's my favorite example
Oh gosh.
is, and I don't even know if you remember this or not.
Okay.
But
Well,
when Everett,
hopefully we'll see.
when Everett was young,
Hmm.
I think it was one of his teachers, it doesn't matter which one, told us about, like, hey, I had asked Everett to help Jackson with his math work
Okay.
in class today. And Everett, for whatever reason, I have no idea where he gets it from, like, has always been really good at math,
Yes.
right? And just
Not
so you
us.
know, like, end of
Sure.
this story, like, he and Jackson are best buddies to this day.
Yes,
They're
they're
both
fine.
15 years old.
Yeah.
And this was when they were in, like, first grade or something.
Yes.
And so, like, he's helping Jackson with his math homework.
Sure.
And so he's helping him with his work, and Jackson gets this problem. And he was just like, Jackson was like, yes, I got it. And Everett goes, yes, good job, Jackson. Little slow though. It's like,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And I was like,
uh-huh.
and I remember his
Yeah.
teacher told us the story, and I was like,
mhm.
oh my God.
Mhm.
Like,
He is embarrassing like that.
yes, he's embarrassing
Yeah,
like that.
uh-huh.
But, like, he was a little kid, he's just
Yeah.
being honest. But
Yeah.
like, but I remember,
are
like,
very
you
honest
came
like
down
that.
hard. It was
Yes.
just like, hey man,
Yeah.
that's not a nice thing to say to
I
your
just
friend.
think I
And he was
said,
like, I wasn't trying
I'm
to be mean.
remembering. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, not everybody has your gifts.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
all the same. We are all made differently.
I am
That's
saying
the interesting part of the world. I
you-
think I was really hard
You
on
do
him about
apply that universally.
Okay. Thank you. Give me your second one.
All right,
Go
my
ahead.
second one. If I start, like, if we are engaged in a conversation, like,
Yeah.
and this is usually with, like, people in the service industry, if I started our conversation kind and you meet me with rudeness, I am racing to the bottom with you.
I'm concerned only because all of these are
travel
just, like,
related.
yes, not only are they travel related, but, like, you just, like, meeting people at their lowest point and then race, like, you know, it's just
This is a
an
fair
observation.
observation. This is a
Just
fair
an
observation.
But I am a little concerned that you're just like, yeah, let me see how we both can get there fast. I'm not saying, like, I think every situation is turn the other cheek appropriate. It's not, especially in this world when people are behaving improperly. Like, you have to set them straight. However, whether it's your job or not, at some point they got to that behavior because no one has set them straight. That's fine. You can be that person. I'm not necessarily like arguing that point. What I am saying is like all of these are a little bit concerning in the fact that you're just like this. If they meet you with rudeness, then you're going to go
Here's an
right
example.
there with
This
them.
happened on my last trip.
Oh gosh, I didn't even hear this one.
I
Okay,
was
go
in
ahead.
Chicago,
Yes.
in the airport.
They're always in the airport. Go.
It
Yeah,
is. Seriously though, if you want to see the worst versions
Sure,
of people,
that's true.
people,
Yes.
go to the airport.
Yes.
It's like
Okay.
y'all are just
And
like,
your
well, I'm great at the
experience.
airport. Like, no,
Yeah.
you're not, like,
Because you're not there all the time.
you know, you
Sure.
forget how to be people at
Yeah,
the
you
airport.
do. People are just kind of they're in.
So like,
Not everyone travels as much as you. Everyone kind of has their blinders on. It's a lot.
I go to a
Carry on.
restaurant to grab a bite to eat.
Sure. In
I
an
sit
airport.
down.
Mhm.
Server comes over.
Mhm.
I look up and I say, "Hey, afternoon. How you doing?" She pulls out her notepad and just stares at me.
Maybe she doesn't have time. You
As
don't know
if
what's
to-
going on.
What do you don't have time for?
I don't know.
Hey, how you doing? What can I
Sometimes
get you?
people just aren't in a place for pleasantries. I don't know. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's a time
is
to
a
ramp
thing
up to level
that Molly
10 and be
does,
crazy.
Where she like, it doesn't matter who it is.
Okay.
You will always give
okay.
somebody the benefit of the doubt.
Because that's
who
what you're
is
supposed to
not
do
me.
as a grown up. This is what happens with mature people. You give people the benefit of the doubt and
I don't
you
understand.
think outside yourself. That is probably not about you in that moment, or whatever they have going on is up here
That's
and
fair.
not about you.
That's fair.
It's just not.
That's
okay.
fair.
So you're going to race to the bottom. So were you rude to her? I'm so glad I have not been with you in these last couple of
Was
travels.
I rude to her?
Yes, because you said it was a race to the bottom because
no,
she met
I
you
wasn't
with
rude.
rudeness.
You know what I was? I was
Curt?
curt because apparently that's
Mhm.
a different thing.
It is. You can be snippy
Give me your number
and
two.
curt.
Give me your
Okay.
number two.
I don't know if
so I'm
this
not
is
me-
good. We keep going
So I'm
through
not mean and
these.
rude to you.
And I don't know. I am feeling a little bit nervous. So mine are all sort of the same vein. I think anytime there's an injustice or someone is being rude to an older person, I will also immediately. It's the same with kids.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't pick on someone who, for whatever reason, is at mature twilight part of life and they're moving slower or they can't get it together or they can't. I mean, for the most part, and I just will say this as a caveat, when we do travel together and when we ever have traveled with someone, there was that gentleman on the plane who was in his 90s flying back to Hawaii when we went last time, and everyone was so loving and so gracious and so kind. Shar sat next to him. Everyone was lovely, and he was slow moving, as you would imagine in your 90s you will be.
Yeah.
And so it was fine, and that one I actually was really happy to sort of see how everyone treated him with such respect, because that's how you should treat. That's how you should treat everyone, but someone who has made it to that age has so much life and so much wisdom and so much for you to learn from. Being rude to them at any part of the world ever would just, again, level 10 fury. I can't deal with it. There was this one time.
You're like the opposite of Don Johnson's character in Tin Cup. Do you remember? Like he yells, like he's yelling to her. He's like, he hates kids, old people, and dogs.
Yeah.
Those are the
My
only
third
three
one
groups
isn't
that Molly
dogs.
loves. Molly loves kids,
Yeah.
old people, and dogs.
I do.
Everyone
Probably in
else
that
can
order.
get bent.
Yeah.
Like you're the opposite of Don Johnson.
I need a t-shirt.
Yeah.
That's really funny. I forgot about that movie, but
Yeah.
you're right. That was really good. I just don't, I think it's to someone who's in the twilight stages of life, you just can't be rude to them ever.
What if
It's
they're
not
rude?
their, that's a good question.
What if they're
Yeah.
old and grumpy?
Mhm. I think you still are, that point is like, yeah, I know you're just kind. You're just always kind. It doesn't matter. You're always kind. Okay, so this is an interesting one because like what's your cutoff limit? Because
What do
our
you mean?
parents, I'm
What do
just
you mean,
saying,
what's my cutoff limit?
yeah, like what do you deem as old?
Well, that number changes as I get older. It's gotten much higher.
I'm so much younger. I
I'm
am. I'm just like a low end middle
okay.
age.
Fun game.
Oh, I don't know.
count
Because
of-
I still have another one
count
to
of
go,
three,
and I
count-
really
that's
want
all
to
right.
talk about
That's all right.
this.
We both have
Okay.
another one.
All right.
But on the
all
count
right.
of three, we're
Yeah.
going to say the number that
Great.
the age you are when you're old.
Let's get to 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Come on.
1, 2, 3.
80. Yes. Yes. Okay, good.
No, peacock.
Turkey. Or turkey.
Terrible.
Oh,
Gotta
no.
work on that exchange. Okay, 80.
Our kids would laugh and be so like
Yeah,
that's a
that
classic.
that was negative aura for all the young people out there. Uh,
80 is yeah.
80. Okay.
Yeah,
That's my
because
number.
I think you hit it and you're still there. I mean, if it goes south, it goes south pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But if you're keeping it together, you seem to be okay to maintain. I mean, barring any sort of like
But if
disasters.
a person
but
over the
yes.
age is over the age of
Yeah,
80, you're just
yeah.
like, you get a pass.
I mean, you can't tell. No one's asking people's age in the airport. But what I'm saying is like,
You know what I mean?
you're moving slower.
You
Things are just,
you get a universal pass.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Even if you're old and grumpy, even if you're having a hard time with life,
We
you
might
just
disagree
can't
on
be
that.
rude. I know. I'm sure you've met an 80-year-old who you want to punch, but it doesn't matter. Probably. You didn't know they were 80. They
Yeah.
were a young 79.
I think
You
about
have no idea.
I think about your brother
ahead.
all the time when I
Yes.
think so like in
Yeah.
old there used to be this guy who worked out
Oh my
at our gym,
gosh.
and I worked
He was
out.
definitely above 80.
Oh, he was 100%
Mhm,
above 80,
mhm.
and he used to wear like
Probably
a
90s.
yellow mesh
Mhm.
crop top.
Yes.
It was
was
incredible,
smelly.
and
Yeah.
it smelled awful.
Yeah, poor guy.
And
yeah.
he would relentlessly murk your brother.
When
Like
you guys were working
we would
out.
we would
I
be working out,
remember
and he
because
would
you'd
come over and be
home.
like, boy, your brother-in-law sure is a lot stronger than you, eh? And then he'd just walk away, and Mark would be so livid.
Well, my
So
brother's
livid.
really easier to like
He would be
stir up too.
so livid.
It's really funny.
like-
I like that he can.
All right.
And then he would come home and talk trash about that guy, and I'd be like, he's
Oh,
really
God,
an old
it
man.
was so good.
God rest his soul, right? I don't think he's with us anymore.
All right, here's my last one.
Okay,
Here's my
please.
last one, because
Please.
we're meandering.
Okay.
If you mess with people I love, like you're gonna see the worst version
Okay.
of me.
Yeah.
And that's not just my kids. It's not just you, but
Sure.
just like I.
You are, yeah.
Like if
wildly protective.
I am
Mhm.
wildly protective
Mhm.
of people I love,
That's great.
and that's my buddies. Like
Sure.
I'm the guy who like if I'm sitting there like with your brother and
Yes.
Wes and
Mhm.
all the guys that I go have
Mhm.
drinks with once a month,
Mhm.
and somebody comes up and gets lippy in the bar, I'm like,
Mhm.
well, now we're gonna
Guess
have to
we're
hurt
gonna
some
get
people,
in a fight. Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like,
We're about to have words.
I don't like that about myself.
Sure.
I don't like it about myself. That's not true. I'm okay with that about myself. That's not true. I'm all right with that.
I really like this sort of therapy of
I'm
like,
okay with that.
I loved you trying to be like, I don't know if I'm okay with
It
it.
wasn't honest.
You think
It wasn't
so
honest.
I appreciate that because you think like, oh, I shouldn't like this about myself,
No.
but at the end of the day, you actually do.
That's 100%.
I
You're
know.
right.
Yeah, I do know you.
Here's
Yes,
here's what's
I
not
am
lost
very-
on me.
okay.
Like I in my brain, I'm like, oh, that makes
Sure.
other people that I'm with feel safe around me.
I don't know if it
And
does.
it probably has the opposite.
Yeah, I
effect.
think here's the thing. I'm okay with you being okay with it, and also the fact that it's not a virtue. No one's like, oh, really? That's just like such. It's a
I know.
wonderful.
It's not.
You know what I
great.
mean? It's not a
It's
virtue.
not great.
It's not a vice. I think it's a neutral, depending on how
Okay,
it's
I'll take that.
used. On how it's used.
I'll take.
It's not used with
I'll
me
take
a lot
no.
because you know how like
I know it makes you wildly uncomfortable.
I'm just uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's really, I don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
And because you are such a actually physically large human being that I feel like it's uncomfortable for other people. So it's like, I don't mind it. I can handle this guy, no problem.
Correct.
I'll take him to the bathroom and tell him his business and he'll come right out here super fuming at me and everything else. But like,
Well, you
it'll
were-
get handled. I don't get intimidated about handling that in you. It is embarrassing because I know other people are
So like,
uncomfortable.
let's
sort
make
of even like witnessing it.
So like, let's make this
Sure.
a teachable moment for
Okay,
a second,
great.
right? Like,
Yeah.
Because this is an important point.
Sure.
Like, I think if you're going to have moments,
Sure.
in public or otherwise, where
Yes.
you're going to sort of like opt to be mean or rude or cruel or curt, not
Yes.
cruel, but curt,
Yes.
right? You have to recognize like what version of that you get to be
Right.
based on who you are.
Yes.
And so like you asked like on the plane,
Mm-hmm.
like, will you turn around and say something? No,
Yeah.
I don't get that luxury.
Okay.
I don't get like, because I'm
Because
a
you
large
already
person,
physically
I don't
have-
get the luxury of
Yeah.
turning around and saying something to the person who's
Right.
trying to wedge their way behind
Sure.
me. What I will do is I will throw my body out there
Sure.
and I will pretend like I don't feel them trying to get by me. Right? Like
Good.
that's the version I get.
Yes.
Because the minute I turn around
and actually say something too.
and
yeah.
I say something,
Yeah.
and worse, like if I raise my voice,
Yeah. People are
oh,
already,
now it's a problem.
Yeah.
Not because it makes people wildly uncomfortable.
Well, it's wildly uncomfortable.
It's
It's
But
just uncomfortable for people, especially if
it's
as a
it's
smaller
uncomfortable
person.
for people who don't know
Yes.
me. Like you and I get in
Sure.
arguments all the time,
Yeah, I
and
know.
you'll raise your voice, and raising
Yeah.
my voice with you has zero impact. Zero impact.
None.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think it's because I've been conditioned because I had a father who raised his voice and we're like, go ahead, burn out, man.
I
You
think
just keep huffing and puffing and
yeah.
I'll sit over here and we'll wait till you're done and then we'll handle stuff. I mean,
But as
it
I'm
doesn't
thinking about
impact
that,
me
I'm just
at
like,
all.
ooh, this is a conversation I
Sure.
have to have with Everett. Like,
Yeah.
hey man,
It does
like
bother him.
as you get older and
Yeah.
bigger,
Yeah.
like this is
Yeah, it's a good awareness.
this is a thing that has to come off the table. Like you don't get this luxury anymore.
Sure. So that's your third one.
Yeah.
This is my third one.
Oh, it's the same?
It is. Well, it's not the same. It's the same version of like, if you are ever in a place where you, again, public place, we just took the kids to New York City
Are you
last
saying
year.
the proverbial you, or are you actually referring to me?
No, I'm saying the proverbial.
Okay.
Proverbial you. Sorry. And I did gesture your way.
Yes.
So that is very confusing. Sorry. I'm talking about if said person is walking through the world in a place that is openly rude. And I'm saying like cruel and rude
Yeah.
to the human beings around them. To your point. Anywhere and there's a public space and you continue rude behavior, I will be a person that will be like, hey, that's not okay. Whether it's my waitress, somebody, you had that guy on the plane a few years ago. We don't have to tell that story, but just like wildly rude to every human person that is in their vortex, right? Like that is not appropriate. It's not okay. Again, we're in a society, not just a democracy. You may not behave like that.
Yeah.
And no one has ever punched you in the face or ever told you that behavior is unacceptable. And so like, I will be the person to be like, and I'll get called every name in the book. I'm sure, whatever. Also, who's this little sprite of a woman telling me have the guts to say whatever they want to say to me in that moment. So people are very, put off by it, but I don't care. It's a good thing I'm very thick-skinned. I don't care.
Here's why it's important.
I care zero.
Here's why it's important to err on the side of
Sure.
kindness.
Yes.
Because and I am going to tell that story.
Oh, okay.
Because I do think it's
It's
important
a story. Go ahead.
It's important to err on the side of kindness
Sure.
because I think if you walk through your life with meanness and rudeness and cruelty, like life will come back to bite you in the ass.
Well, and I don't think people like get there overnight. Like they're not trying to be intentionally mean and cruel, whatever. Like certain behaviors just come out because of whatever has happened in their life. Whatever has happened in their life, and they have those issues, and now they're being, just like put on all the people who are in their sphere. Yeah. I get that, right? Like I'm sorry, whatever has happened to you emotionally or whatever. Like I get that that's like a real issue for you. It doesn't get to be put on the rest of us who are strangers to you and have to deal with you in this, whatever, 2 hour window or hour window or, whatever time we have to be together.
And
Go
here's
ahead.
why.
Go ahead.
Here's
Tell
where
the story.
Life always wins,
Yeah.
right? Lesson for you kids
This
out
is
there.
a really interesting story. Go.
I'm standing in line. I'm behind
Yes.
this lady. I'm waiting to get on a plane.
Yeah.
Shocker. We're in the airport. I'm waiting to get on the plane. And as we're boarding, this lady is next in line. I'm right behind her. This guy in a suit comes running up behind me. He's pulling his roller bag and bang, he banks it. Like
I don't remember that
bangs
part.
his roller
Did he
bag
whack you?
into my
Okay.
knee as he's passing me.
Sure.
And he cocks the entire line.
Yes.
He gets in front of me and this lady. And I'm like, okay, like this is one of those moments where I'm like, hey, we're living in a society. We
Yeah.
have norms.
Yeah.
And so I say something. And
What did you say?
I leaned out and I said, hey, man, there's a line here.
Yes.
And he looked at me and goes, and you're in it. Beep. Scans his boarding pass and gets on the plane.
And your
And I'm like,
exploding.
well, this is how murders happen. Here we go. Like I'm gonna kill this
It's
guy.
not funny, but
Right?
it is because
Like,
your head is exploding. I mean, I know even like saying that to you, like immediately is like talk about straight to
I'm
fury.
just like, oh my God. Right. So like
okay.
so this lady scans her boarding pass. I
Mhm.
scan mine. We get on the plane.
Yeah.
As we're walking, of course, this guy's sitting in first class.
Sure.
This lady and I walk right by him.
Great.
Because
At least you don't have to sit next to
I'm in
him.
the row right behind first class,
okay.
and she's in the row right next to me behind first
Sure.
class. And plane takes off, and I am spending the entirety of this flight trying to figure out like what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like
Because you can't let him have the last word.
This
You just
behavior
can't leave
cannot
it.
go
Sure,
unanswered.
Sure.
I have
It's
to
a rude
do something.
behavior in the world.
And as
The
I'm sitting there,
rudest, I would
it
like
was
to
a
say,
short
yeah.
flight to Phoenix.
Okay.
We're about an hour into this like hour and 20 minute flight, and all of a sudden, over the loudspeaker, it's just like it's the classic like, "Hey, is there a doctor
Sure.
on board?"
I've never had that happen, but sure. I
Yeah.
guess it happens all the
I've
time.
had it happen a couple times.
Okay.
And so, doctor comes from the back of the plane, goes up,
Mhm.
and goes up into first class, and they pull somebody out. Well,
Sure.
it's this guy.
Yeah.
right? And they're doing chest compressions on this guy. I'm like, oh my God, long story like he dies
On the plane.
on the flight.
Oh my God.
And
But did he just like have a heart attack or something? Or you don't know. I mean,
to
it's not
this-
like they can
to-
tell you.
I have no idea.
I mean, it had to be, right?
He dies on the
Oh,
flight,
God.
right? And so
I just would
when we
immediately been like,
land,
get me off this plane.
when we land, they're like, hey, everybody, like, please stay in your seats. Like, they literally bring on the paramedic, they load this guy up, and they take him off the plane. And when they do that, I turn and look at the woman next to me who was standing in front of me, and she
that
looks
he passed.
that he also
yeah.
passed, and she looks at me and goes,
Ah.
and just shrugs her shoulders.
Yeah.
And it was the most savage shoulder
Yeah,
shrug I've ever
ice
seen.
cold.
And then they come on the loudspeaker.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for flying United Airlines. We hope you choose us again. And
Yeah,
we all
supposed to
get,
be-
and then we all just left.
Oh,
And I was just like,
that's
dude,
so bad.
this is why you got to be nice to people.
I mean,
Like, it's not
sure,
why.
It's
But I'll
not
tell you
why.
what, it's
Sure.
real incentive.
How you
Don't let that be your,
your
last interaction with
yeah,
humanity.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how you go about the world matters,
Yeah,
right? We believe
does.
that. We instill that in
It
our
does.
children. What you put out comes back to you.
I-
We always
yes.
start with kindness. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. It doesn't matter what we're doing. It doesn't matter whatever place we are traveling to, school, home, whatever. You have to start with kindness. And we talk about this a lot because we talk about like how difficult it is to be nice to the people you love, right? Like
Yes.
that's way more difficult. I'm way ruder and inappropriate to my family and other people than I am
For sure.
to every other person that I come. But it's easier to be kind to people that you don't have to live with or pick up their crap or, you know. That's true for everyone. That's true for everyone.
easier
It
to-
is.
Yeah, that's
It
fair.
is. I mean, it's nice to
That's
go
fair.
volunteer in other countries and see
Yeah.
all the good you're doing. It feels really great. But you don't have to live with those people. You just get to do all the good stuff, and then it's hard to be kind to the people that you love most. And
Here's-
you have to live with and be with on a day-to-day interaction.
Here's
But
where
go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to put a bow on it.
Put a bow on it.
So here's
bow on it.
the thing that you said that I think is great. And
Sure.
I think we can, like, instead of telling kids just like, hey, blanket, like, be kind, be kind, be
Yeah.
kind. I think what you said
It's
is
not
really smart.
actionable.
I think it's like, hey, start with kindness.
Yes.
You know what? And recognize, like, you got a little mean in your back pocket. Like, that's
Yeah.
okay. Right. But start with kindness. Always.
It's you have to.
Yeah.
You can't start with anything else. You always have
All
to
right.
start with the highest bit.
I'll do my best.
Okay.
All
Please
right.
do. Let's not have
Thanks for
anyone
listening,
else
everybody.
die on your flight.
Like the podcast, hit the subscribe button, please. Thanks for everyone who has already subscribed.
this is
It's
great.
amazing.
Mhm.
We're so grateful. Find us anywhere podcasts are listened to. Find us on YouTube. You can find me this week in
Mhm.
Texas,
Yes.
in Illinois,
Yes.
in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I think is this week. Oh,
Great.
Molly, where can we find you?
You're gonna find me. This is kind of a weird one at Colorado Ballet because our daughter's doing summer intensive auditions.
Yeah,
so
buddy.
I'm like there every weekend. It's great. All right, good times.
All
Woo!
right. Thanks,
Yay.
guys. We'll see you on next week's episode of Teaching Keating. Be well.